Hey everyone, welcome back to the English Leap Podcast, your podcast for easy English conversation, real daily life talk, and simple listening practice.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Anna. So Jake, how was your day today, honestly?
Actually, kind of rough. Nothing terrible happened, just one of those days where everything felt a little harder than usual.
Oh no, what happened?
Just small things, really. A meeting ran way over time, I made a small mistake in a report, and then I spilled coffee on my desk right before an important call.
That does sound like a classic bad day. Small things stacking up until the whole day just feels heavy.
Exactly. And I think that's such a relatable experience, and honestly, a perfect topic for today.
Right. Today we're talking about dealing with a bad day at work, useful vocabulary for describing frustrating days, and simple techniques for handling them a little more smoothly.
This is such a practical, universal topic too, since honestly, everyone has bad days at work sometimes, no matter their job or industry.
Exactly. And for English learners, having the right vocabulary to describe these days and talk about them with colleagues or friends makes such a difference in feeling understood and supported.
Right, and honestly, I think today's episode might be one of the most immediately useful ones we've done, since almost everyone can think of a bad workday from just the past week or two.
True, and speaking of which, I'm sure a few listeners are nodding along right now thinking of their own version of my laptop crash or your mass email moment.
Before we start, quick reminder, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's learning English too.
And tell us in the comments, what's your go-to way of dealing with a bad day at work? Great writing practice too.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start with some useful phrases for actually describing a bad day at work.
Right, it's been one of those days is such a classic, simple phrase for describing a generally difficult day.
I'm having a rough day, or today's been a bit of a mess, also work really well for casual conversation.
And for something a little stronger, everything that could go wrong went wrong, describes a day where multiple small problems piled up.
Right, and I'm completely swamped, or I'm drowning in work. Describe feeling overwhelmed by workload specifically.
We could also say, I just need to vent for a minute, when you want to express frustration without necessarily looking for advice or solutions.
Let's act out a quick example. Hey, how's your day going?
Honestly, it's been one of those days. My computer crashed, then I missed an important call. I just need to vent for a second.
Oh no, go ahead, I'm listening.
Right, that's such a natural, complete little exchange, using several of today's phrases at once.
A few more useful phrases. I'm at the end of my rope, meaning you've reached your limit of patience or energy. Or, I could really use a win right now, meaning you need something to go well after a string of difficulties.
And one more, today's been a whirlwind, describing a day that felt chaotic and fast-paced, with too much happening at once.
And a slightly more formal option for professional settings, it's been a challenging day, which works well when you want to acknowledge difficulty without sounding too casual or overly dramatic in front of a manager or client. Jake, tell us more about your bad day today, or maybe a worse one from the past.
Actually, I have a much worse one from a few years ago. I accidentally sent an email meant for a colleague to the entire company mailing list instead.
Oh no, that sounds mortifying.
It really was. The email included some fairly casual, joking comments that definitely weren't meant for the whole company to see.
How did you handle it in the moment?
Honestly, I panicked for about 5 minutes, but then I quickly sent a follow-up email acknowledging the mistake with a little humor, apologizing, and asking everyone to please ignore the previous message.
That sounds like such a mature way to handle an embarrassing mistake.
Thanks, and surprisingly, a few colleagues actually replied with kind, understanding messages. Some even shared their own embarrassing email stories, which made me feel a lot better.
That's such a great example of how a bad moment at work can sometimes turn into an unexpectedly bonding experience with colleagues.
Exactly. And it taught me that most workplace mistakes, even embarrassing ones, are far more forgivable than they feel in the panicked moment right after they happen.
Did that experience change how you handle mistakes generally, beyond just that specific situation?
Actually, yes. I used to catastrophize small mistakes quite a bit, imagining the worst possible consequences immediately. But after seeing how quickly that situation actually resolved, with humor and understanding, I've become much better at pausing and thinking, okay, this feels big right now, but how bad will this actually be in a week?
That's such a helpful, practical question to ask yourself in the moment, especially when panic makes everything feel more catastrophic than it probably actually is.
Exactly. And almost every time I ask myself that question now, the honest answer is, this really won't matter much in a week, which genuinely helps calm the initial panic.
Anna, what about you? Any memorable bad work days? Oh, definitely. This one still makes me a little anxious just thinking about it, even years later. Actually, yes. I once had a really important presentation and my laptop completely crashed just minutes before I was supposed to present.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
It really was in the moment. I felt panicked and honestly a little embarrassed in front of everyone waiting.
What did you do?
I quickly asked a colleague if I could borrow their laptop, and thankfully I had saved my presentation to a shared drive, so I managed to pull it up just in time.
That's such a stressful situation to handle under pressure.
Right, and honestly, the presentation went well in the end, but that whole experience taught me the importance of having backups ready, and also staying calm enough to think clearly during an unexpected crisis.
That's such a valuable lesson, both practically, having backups, and emotionally, staying calm under pressure.
I also remember, right in that panicked moment before finding a solution, I took just one slow, deep breath and reminded myself, panicking won't fix the laptop. Staying calm will help me think of a solution faster.
That's such a practical, in-the-moment technique, a small, conscious reminder that panic itself doesn't actually solve anything. It just makes clear thinking harder.
Exactly. And now, whenever something unexpected goes wrong at work, I try to use that same small mental reset. One slow breath, then focus on solutions, rather than spiraling into panic first.
I think that's honestly one of the most valuable skills for handling a bad day well, that small pause between the problem happening and your reaction to it.
Let's cover some practical techniques for handling a bad day at work once it's already happening. Take a short break.
Even 5 minutes away from your desk, a short walk, or just stepping outside can help reset your mood and perspective during a difficult day.
Right. This connects to our small habits episode too. Even a tiny break, just a few minutes, can genuinely shift your mental state rather than pushing through nonstop.
I actually do this myself now. Whenever a day feels especially overwhelming, I step outside for just 5 minutes. No phone, just a short walk around the block.
And does that small break actually help in the moment?
Surprisingly, yes, every time. I come back feeling noticeably calmer, even though nothing about the actual situation has changed.
I actually experienced this the same day we recorded this episode, funnily enough. I stepped outside for just a few minutes after a difficult moment earlier, and by the time I came back, I felt genuinely more capable of handling the rest of the day calmly.
Talk to someone.
Right. Sometimes simply venting to a trusted colleague or friend, without needing advice, genuinely helps release built-up frustration.
Exactly, and it helps to be clear about what you need first. Can I vent for a second? I don't need advice, just need to get this out. Sets clear expectations for the conversation.
Right, that phrase is so useful since sometimes well-meaning people jump straight into advice, when really you just want to feel heard.
I've noticed this myself too. Sometimes I catch myself immediately offering solutions when a colleague vents to me, when really they probably just wanted a listening ear in that moment.
Right, and simply asking, do you want me to just listen, or would advice be helpful right now, is such a considerate way to support someone properly, rather than assuming what kind of support they actually need.
Reminding yourself, this is just one difficult day, not my whole career, can help put things into a healthier, calmer perspective.
Right, and it also helps to remember that most bad days are temporary. Tomorrow genuinely does bring a fresh start, a new set of circumstances, and often a much calmer mindset.
Exactly. And separating today was hard from I'm bad at my job is such an important distinction, since a single hard day rarely reflects your overall abilities or worth as an employee.
Right. I think writing this distinction down, even just once, today was hard, but that doesn't define my ability, can help it feel more real and believable during an especially discouraging moment. Even during a bad day, finding one small thing that went okay or one small task you completed can help shift your focus away from everything that went wrong.
Right. This connects to our Small Habits episode 2. A small, specific win, I finished that report, or I handled that difficult call well, can genuinely balance out an otherwise heavy day.
Exactly, and sometimes writing just one small win at the end of a hard day can help you end the day on a slightly more positive, balanced note.
Right. I think this works especially well because our brains naturally tend to remember and focus on negative moments more strongly than positive ones. So consciously noting a small win helps balance that natural tendency.
Right, and I also think having something small to look forward to after work, a nice meal, a show, time with a friend, can help ease the heaviness of a difficult workday. Right, even something as simple as, I'm going to make my favorite dinner tonight, gives your mind a small, comforting anchor to look forward to throughout a difficult day.
Exactly. And this connects nicely to our Weekend Habits episode 2. Small, simple comforts really do make a meaningful difference even on the hardest days.
Right, and I've noticed that even just knowing something small is waiting for me before the workday even ends genuinely helps make the remaining hours feel a little lighter and more manageable. Let's go through a few common causes of bad workdays too, since recognizing the specific cause can actually help you choose the right coping strategy.
Right. One common cause is simple overwhelm. Too many tasks, not enough time, which often responds well to prioritizing just one or two most important tasks rather than trying to tackle everything at once.
Another common cause is conflict, a disagreement with a colleague or manager, which often benefits from the polite disagreement techniques we covered in a previous episode, along with a little time to cool down before addressing it further.
A third common cause is simple mistakes, like my email story, which usually responds best to quick, honest acknowledgement followed by moving forward without excessive dwelling.
And a fourth cause, technical problems, computer crashes, technology failures, like my presentation story, which honestly often just require patience and a bit of improvisation in the moment.
Right. And a fifth cause worth mentioning, simple exhaustion or burnout, which isn't really about one bad day at all, but rather an accumulation of stress over time, requiring more significant rest and recovery, rather than just a quick fix.
Exactly. Recognizing which of these categories your bad day actually falls into can really help you respond in the most effective, appropriate way.
I also think it's worth mentioning that sometimes multiple causes overlap on the same day too, like my email mistake combined with the general embarrassment and social stress of a mass company email, which made that day feel especially heavy.
Right, and recognizing that a day might involve more than one type of difficulty at once can help you address each part separately, rather than feeling overwhelmed by one big, undefined mess of stress.
Let's talk specifically about bad days caused by difficult interactions with a colleague or manager, since this deserves a bit of extra attention.
Right. Useful phrases here include, that interaction was pretty tense, or I felt like that conversation didn't go well, which describe the situation honestly without immediately assigning blame.
Exactly, and it helps to give yourself a little time before responding further. I need a moment to process that before I respond is a completely valid, healthy thing to say to yourself, or even to the other person.
Right, and if the difficult interaction involved criticism, even if delivered poorly, it can help to separate the valid part of the feedback from the delivery itself, asking yourself, is there something useful here, even if it wasn't said kindly?
Exactly. And if the situation feels like it needs addressing directly, using our polite disagreement phrases from a previous episode, I wanted to follow up on our conversation earlier. I have a few thoughts. Can help resolve tension constructively rather than letting it linger.
Right, and it's also worth acknowledging sometimes a difficult interaction with a colleague or boss says more about their own stress or mood that day than it does about you specifically, which can help you take it a little less personally.
I also think it helps to have a trusted colleague or friend you can quickly check in with after a tense interaction, just to get a little outside perspective. Was I overreacting, or was that genuinely a tough interaction? Can help you process the situation more clearly.
Right. Sometimes we're too close to a stressful moment to see it objectively, and a quick, honest outside perspective can really help calibrate your own reaction appropriately.
Let's talk about what happens after work, too, since a bad work day can sometimes follow us home if we're not careful.
Right. This connects to our weekend habits episode. Having a small, intentional transition between work and home, even just 5 or 10 minutes of quiet time, a walk, changing clothes, can help signal to your brain that the workday is genuinely over.
Exactly. And useful phrases here include, I'm leaving work at work today, meaning a conscious decision not to let workday stress bleed into your evening or personal time.
Right, and it also helps to be honest with people at home, too. I had a rough day. I might need a bit of quiet time before I'm ready to talk much. Sets a clear, kind expectation for family or roommates.
Exactly. And this small honesty prevents a bad workday from accidentally spilling over into frustration with people who had nothing to do with the actual problem.
Right, and finally, engaging in something completely unrelated to work in the evening, a hobby, exercise, a favorite show, helps create genuine mental separation from the stress of the day.
I also think it helps to have a specific small ritual marking the transition, changing out of work clothes, making a cup of tea, even just closing your laptop with a deliberate small pause. These tiny rituals can genuinely help your brain shift from work mode into home mode.
Right, that's such a simple, practical idea. A small, consistent physical action that signals to your mind the workday is officially over now.
Let's clear up a few myths about bad workdays before continuing.
Myth 1. An good employee never has bad days. Actually, even the most skilled, dedicated employees have occasional bad days. It's a completely normal part of any job, not a sign of weakness or incompetence.
Right. Bad days happen to everyone, regardless of experience level or how much they generally enjoy their work.
Myth 2. I need to hide my frustration completely to seem professional. While managing emotions professionally matters, completely suppressing frustration can actually increase stress over time, whereas healthy, appropriate venting, like we discussed earlier, genuinely helps release built-up tension.
Right. Professionalism doesn't require pretending everything's always fine. It just means expressing frustration in appropriate ways and appropriate settings.
Myth 3. One bad day means I'm not cut out for this job. A single difficult day rarely reflects your overall fit for a role or career. It's usually just a temporary situational difficulty, not a permanent verdict on your abilities.
Right, and confusing a bad day with a bad career fit can lead to unnecessary premature decisions, when really most bad days pass within a day or two, leaving your overall situation unchanged.
Myth 4. One more worth mentioning. If I talk about my bad day, I'm being negative or unprofessional. Sharing an honest, appropriately framed account of a difficult day, especially with supportive colleagues or friends, is really just healthy communication, not negativity for its own sake.
Right. There's a real difference between constant complaining without any resolution and occasionally honestly sharing a difficult experience, which actually strengthens relationships and releases stress in a healthy way.
This is actually worth exploring a little further, since sometimes people genuinely do need to distinguish between an occasional bad day and a deeper, ongoing problem with their job or career.
Right. One helpful sign is frequency. If bad days happen occasionally, once every few weeks, that's usually just normal variation. But if nearly every day feels difficult or draining, that might point toward a bigger issue worth examining.
Exactly. And another helpful sign is recovery. After a normal bad day, you usually feel back to your regular self within a day or so. If exhaustion or dread persists for weeks without relief, that's a different, more serious pattern.
Right, and it also helps to notice whether the difficulty is tied to specific temporary circumstances, a busy project, a particular difficult colleague, versus something more fundamental, like consistently feeling misaligned with the actual nature of the work itself.
Exactly. And if it does seem like a beeper issue, that's honestly a much bigger conversation, possibly involving a trusted mentor or even professional career guidance, rather than simply applying the bad day coping techniques we've covered today.
Right. Today's episode really focuses on the normal, occasional bad day, but it's worth acknowledging that distinction exists too, so people can seek the right kind of support for whichever situation actually applies to them.
We received a great message from a listener connecting to today's topic.
Oh, tell us.
He said he used to bottle up frustration from bad workdays completely until it built into much bigger stress and burnout over time.
That's such a common, unfortunately harmful pattern.
Right. And he said learning to simply say, "I'm having a rough day, I just need a few minutes," to a trusted colleague actually helped release that daily built-up tension before it accumulated into something bigger.
That's such a great example of how small, honest communication can genuinely prevent bigger stress down the road.
We also received a second story from a listener who used to feel like every small mistake at work meant she was failing completely, letting one bad moment ruin her entire day.
That's such a relatable, common pattern too.
Right. She said a colleague once told her something simple that stuck with her. One bad moment doesn't erase all the good moments you've had this week. That reframe genuinely helped her stop letting single mistakes spiral into a completely ruined day.
That's such a valuable perspective, honestly, keeping a small mistake in proportion rather than letting it define the whole day or week.
Exactly. And she said she now tries to consciously remind herself of that phrase whenever a small mistake happens, and it's genuinely helped her bad days feel much less overwhelming and much more manageable.
That's such a simple but powerful mental tool, right? Keeping perspective on the full picture rather than fixating on just the one difficult moment.
She also mentioned that she started keeping a small, informal list of good moments each week. Nothing fancy, just quick notes, which made it much easier to actually remember and believe that phrase during a hard moment.
That's such a practical, concrete habit, having actual evidence ready to counter that spiraling, catastrophizing feeling when a mistake happens.
Exactly. And she said over time, this small habit genuinely changed how resilient she felt during difficult days, since she had real, specific proof that her weeks were generally filled with far more good moments than bad ones. We got a question. What if a bad day happens because of a mistake I made? How do I handle that specifically?
Great question. It really helps to acknowledge the mistake honestly, without excessive self-criticism. Something like, "I made a mistake, here's how I'm fixing it," shows accountability without spiraling into shame.
Right. And remembering Jake's email story, most workplace mistakes are far more forgivable and far less catastrophic than they feel in the immediate panicked moment.
I also think it helps to separate the mistake itself from your overall value as an employee. One error doesn't erase months or years of solid, reliable work, even though it might feel that way in the anxious moment right after it happens.
Right. And it can help to ask yourself, if a colleague made this exact same mistake, would I judge them as harshly as I'm judging myself right now? Usually, the honest answer is no. We tend to be far more forgiving of others than ourselves.
Exactly. Extending that same grace to yourself is honestly one of the healthiest things you can do after making a workplace mistake.
Let's also talk briefly about preventing bad days before they even happen, since a few small habits can genuinely reduce how often difficult days occur in the first place.
Right, this connects to our small habits episode again. Small morning routines, a calm start, a good night's sleep, a moment of quiet before checking messages can set a steadier tone for the whole day ahead.
Exactly. And preparing the night before, laying out what you need, reviewing your schedule briefly, can reduce the small chaos that sometimes triggers a difficult day right from the start.
Right, and it also helps to build in small buffers throughout the day, a few extra minutes between meetings, a short pause before responding to a stressful email, which can prevent minor stress from compounding into a genuinely bad day.
Exactly. And finally, regularly checking in with your own energy and stress levels, not waiting until you're completely overwhelmed, allows you to address small issues before they build into a much bigger, harder day.
Right, none of these habits guarantee a perfect day every time, but they genuinely do seem to reduce both the frequency and intensity of bad days over time.
I also want to add this connects nicely to our motivation episode too. Taking care of basic needs, sleep, food, rest, plays such a significant role in how resilient we feel when unexpected difficulties do arise during a workday.
Right, a well-rested, well-fed version of yourself is simply much better equipped to handle a stressful moment calmly compared to an exhausted, depleted version of yourself facing that exact same difficulty.
I also want to mention that how you talk about a bad day often changes depending on who you're talking to, which is worth being mindful of.
Right. With close friends and family, you can usually be fully honest and detailed. Today was awful. Let me tell you everything that happened, since they know you well and are there to support you fully.
With colleagues, it often helps to keep things a little lighter and more general. Rough day, but I'm getting through it. Respects professional boundaries while still acknowledging the difficulty honestly.
And with your manager specifically, if the bad day involves something they genuinely need to know about, a mistake, a missed deadline, it helps to focus on the facts and your plan moving forward rather than dwelling heavily on the emotional difficulty of the day.
Right. Something like, I ran into an issue with the report. Here's what happened, and here's my plan to fix it. Keeps the conversation professional and solution-focused, even on a genuinely hard day.
Exactly. Adjusting your tone and level of detail based on your audience is honestly such a valuable communication skill, well beyond just talking about bad days specifically.
I also think it's worth mentioning, for English learners specifically, this adjustment might feel a little tricky at first, knowing exactly how much detail or emotion is appropriate for each type of relationship.
Right, and honestly, this comes more naturally with practice and observation, paying attention to how native English speakers around you adjust their own tone in different professional and personal settings.
Exactly. And it's completely fine to start a little more cautious and formal, gradually adjusting as you become more comfortable reading the social context of each specific relationship and situation.
Let's connect this directly to English learning too, since bad days can happen during language learning as well. A conversation that goes poorly, a mistake that feels embarrassing, a moment of feeling completely stuck.
Right. And honestly, most of the techniques we discussed today apply just as well to a bad English learning day as they do to a bad work day.
Exactly. Taking a short break from studying, talking to someone about the frustration, reframing a single difficult conversation as just one moment, not a reflection of your overall progress, focusing on one small thing you did understand or communicate well.
Right, and this connects back to our procrastination and motivation episodes too. A discouraging language learning moment doesn't erase your overall progress, just like a bad workday doesn't erase your overall competence at your job.
Exactly. And if you've had a frustrating moment speaking or practicing English recently, maybe today's episode is a good reminder to extend yourself the same grace you'd extend to a colleague having a rough day at work.
Right. And I think it's worth remembering, every single fluent English speaker you admire has had plenty of their own frustrating language moments too, whether learning English or another language themselves. Difficult days are simply part of any real learning journey.
Exactly. So the next time a conversation in English doesn't go quite the way you hoped, try using some of today's phrases, even on yourself. It's been one of those conversations, but tomorrow's a fresh start.
That's such a lovely, practical way to bring today's whole topic full circle, applying it not just to work, but to your English learning journey too.
It's been one of those days, honestly.
These sentences are genuinely useful for real conversations, not just as an exercise, so feel free to use them exactly as they are. I'm completely swamped with work today.
I just need to vent for a minute, if that's okay.
I made a mistake, and here's how I'm fixing it.
Today was rough, but tomorrow's a fresh start.
Let's also try a couple of slightly longer sentences.
Everything that could go wrong today went wrong, but I'm handling it.
I need a moment to process that before I respond.
One bad moment doesn't erase all the good moments I've had this week.
Try saying one of these sentences out loud today, maybe describing your own recent bad day. Let's review a few useful words from today's episode.
There's a good mix today, some describing the difficulty itself and some describing how we cope with it. First, swamped, meaning overwhelmed with work or tasks.
For example, I'm completely swamped this week.
Next, to vent, meaning to express frustration openly, often without seeking advice.
For example, I just needed to vent about my day.
We also used to reframe, meaning to look at a situation from a different, often more helpful perspective.
For example, I tried to reframe the day as just one bad moment, not a bad week.
And finally, accountability, meaning taking responsibility for your actions or mistakes.
For example, I showed accountability by acknowledging my mistake right away.
One more useful phrase, to catastrophize, meaning to imagine the worst possible outcome, often exaggerating how bad a situation really is.
For example, I tend to catastrophize small mistakes, imagining consequences that never actually happen.
And burnout, meaning a state of complete exhaustion from prolonged stress, often connected to work.
For example, bottling up frustration every day eventually led to burnout.
Try using one or two of these words today, maybe in a comment describing your own bad day experience. We covered useful phrases for describing a bad day, like one of those days and swamped.
We shared our own stories, Jake's embarrassing email mistake and my presentation laptop crisis.
We covered practical techniques, taking a break, talking to someone, reframing, focusing on small wins, and planning something to look forward to.
We shared a wonderful listener story about preventing burnout through honest, small communication.
We also covered common causes of bad days, dealing with a difficult colleague or boss, recovering once you're home, common myths about bad work days, how to tell a bad day from a bad job fit, preventing bad days before they start, and a second listener story about not letting one mistake ruin the whole day.
Before we close, one last small tip. The next time you have a bad day, try saying out loud or just to yourself, "This is just one hard day, not my whole story."
Right. That small reframe, keeping today's difficulty in proportion to your bigger picture, can genuinely help ease the heaviness of a rough day.
And remember, tomorrow really does bring a fresh start, a new set of circumstances, and often a calmer mindset too.
And if today happens to be a genuinely good day for you while you're listening to this, maybe save this episode for the next time you actually need it, since bad days, unfortunately, do tend to happen to all of us eventually. Next time, we're going to talk about something a little different. How to ask for help in English without feeling awkward. Useful phrases for reaching out when you need support.
That connects nicely to today's episode too, since sometimes dealing with a bad day well means simply asking for help, rather than trying to handle everything completely alone.
We're really looking forward to that one.
It's honestly amazing how many of our episodes end up connecting to each other too. Small habits, motivation, comparison, disagreement, and now bad days. They really all weave together into one bigger picture of navigating
navigating daily life a little more smoothly. If you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what's your go-to way of handling a bad day at work.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.